Welcome back to the Grand Solar Minimum channel. Today is Monday, February 4th, 2019. Hope everyone had a great weekend. Let's get right into it from grandsolarminimum.com. Take a look at our headlines for today. But first, our solar wind speed sitting at 391.6 kilometers per second with a density of 7.4. Now, we were in a solar stream for a couple of days. However, it's been quiet. The KP indices have not gone past 4 since February 3rd. Our 24-hour max today has been a 3, and right now we're sitting at a 2. And you can see that the solar proton flux and solar X-ray flux is very, very quiet. That is our sun right now, and we are spotless. We've been spotless for over 4 days now consecutively. No sunspots to report at this time. And that puts us for the total of 2019 at 18 spotless days in 2019. And that's a little over 50% according to SPACEWEATHER.com. Now taking a look at the SDO in motion, as I said earlier, we are now out of a solar wind stream, so we will not have any more high impact auroras or any possibilities for G1 geomagnetic storms. However, we are monitoring still. The active region has not yet been named as sunspot at all, so we are quiet at the time. And if we take a look at the overall picture of our sun right now, there's our bright spot, but really nothing to report all the way to the backside. Of course, that missing data being stereo B, but the sun looks to be a little quiet unless we get some kind of late type of activity that just develops on its own. As of right now, we should see anywhere for the next 13 to 16 days spotless, unless we get that spontaneous activity that just develops. But according to this thing right here, it's going to be quiet for a little while. Taking a look at the TSI, it has been a little bit up and down, and here lately it's been on the uptrend, but you see it peaked on January 25th at 1360.7230, and then just the other day on January 27th it got to 1360.7190, so slightly below the 7.2. And today, the reading comes in for January 27th at 1360.68, so starting to trend back down once again. Possibly the next time we get a TSI update on Wednesday, we will probably be reporting that it came close to 1360.70 if the pattern holds. All right, let's go back over to our SPACEWEATHER.com, or actually our space news section here, GSM. Get some headlines out there. Killed as powerful storm hits California, more heavy rain is expected. I think that meant to say around 6 were killed today in California, and this has been a story that is being covered nationwide. And so, rightfully so, a powerful Pacific storm hit Southern California on February 2nd and 3rd of 2019, bringing heavy rain, strong winds. During the peak of the storm, coastal and valley areas received up to 1 inch of rain per hour. Key highways were shut down as the mud and water rushed down from wildfire burn areas. 6 people had died during the storm and at least 9 others were injured. Now, this system brought more than 4 inches of rain at lower elevations, several feet of snow, and road-closing whiteout conditions in the mountains. The strongest wind gust was measured in Santa Barbara County at 80 miles per hour, downing trees, power lines across the region, and over 30,000 customers were left without power during the storm itself. Mandatory evacuation orders were issued for Woolsey Firebird area, Seminole Springs, Mobile Home Estates in Angora County, and Paso Canyon Malibu West in Malibu. Evacuations were also ordered and recommended for neighborhoods near the Thomas, Whittier, and Sherpa fire scars. Mud as high as 3 feet deep closed stretches of Highway 101 in Santa Barbara County and the Pacific Coast Highway in Malibu. And this was the first thing that I saw. Meteorologist Steve Glazier, one of my favorite meteorologists in the business right now, folks. Very humble guy. He speaks truth, facts to the best of his knowledge. And this was the first person I saw footage of this. I actually showed Mario. We were in the middle of a family get-together, and I said, "Can you believe this?" Not surprising when you've seen how much rain has fallen in that region in a short period of time. This is just outstanding here. Continuing on, Watchers.news, lots of flood footage here, lots of pictures. Multiple accidents were reported, including one on Interstate 5 that killed a volunteer member of the Ventura County Search and Rescue and injured 9 others. It says here, as reported by the AP, the team from Ventura County was on its way to a training exercise on February 2nd when members stopped to help at the scene of a single-site rollover crash. A minivan carrying a family was traveling too fast for the wet conditions, lost control, and plowed into members of the team, Los Angeles County Fire Captain Tony and Brenda said. 9 people were transported to the hospitals, including 3 members of the team. 5 people died on February 3rd after a twin-engine Cessna crashed into a home shortly taken off of Fullerton Municipal Airport in Orange County. Now, I'd like to find the footage on this as well. There was a lot of people taken to the streets, especially posting on Twitter, showing the scene, and it looked like something out of a movie. This plane had crashed in a neighborhood, and there was a couple structures that were on fire. I'll have to try to find the footage on that, but thanks to the Watchers.news for your coverage on this particular storm. I also threw in another link here from USA Today, just so I kind of get both the best worlds here as far as if there's any statistics that might have been mentioned during the previous article, but apparently not. So I think Watchers, you won the competition here on who covered this better, Watchers.news or USA Today. And from what I'm looking at, way more coverage of footage, video images, and of course statistics about the region and what's happened right now. So thank you once again, Watcher.news, for your continuous coverage. Deadly highway collapse after heavy rain hits La Paz, Bolivia. Let's go ahead and check it out here on the Watchers.news. Once again, a part of the highway northwest of capital La Paz, Bolivia collapsed on February 2nd, killing at least 11 people and injuring more than 20. The incident happened around 7:50 local time near a spot known as the El Chorro Puente Armes after several days of heavy rain. According to a statement released by Bolivia's defense ministry, the event occurred Saturday morning when a large block of earth collapsed. And this is outstanding footage here, folks. Check this out. This is the after footage. The footage I saw was actually showing it collapsing, but compared to the first pictures that I'd seen, this got way worse. Wow. Absolutely breathtaking footage. No way do these people in this area here should feel safe for even being spectators at this point. But basically, the earth is moving, folks. And this is what happens when you have multiple days of heavy rain, a flooded region, an area that's used to heavy moisture that gets a sudden burst of 4 inches in an hour. Now they're trying to tell people to move to higher ground or get away from this scene altogether. So let's take a look here at the article, see what we can get on the stats. I think the video says it all right there. Public Works Chief Oscar Coco said the bodies were found in 2 cars that were swept away some 650 feet down the canyon. So they unfortunately were suffocated. Heavy rains have been falling for 2 days, and the cars were in a line of vehicles making their way along a muddy patch of road when a mountainside gave way. The ministry said the suspects, there may be other bodies and other vehicles buried under tons of debris, adding that it will take a few more days to finish the search and rescue option. Local media reported that the slide swept away a bus, 6 vehicles, and 1 house with people still inside. Several dozen homes were evacuated. New landslides have been reported in the region, but there are no reports of casualties at this time. Defense Minister Zavaleta said the rains over the past couple of days affected several municipalities, mainly the departments of La Paz and the northern region of Beni, such as Ganay, Alto Beni, Palos Blancos, Coyoco, Reyes, Sambora, and off parts of Trinidad and Riberta. And we'll leave the link in the description. Actually, the link will be in our description box here at this article. Once again, this format that we've been deciding to go with, where we put the article up on thegrandsolarminimum.com, and that way you folks can look at it exactly real time if you'd like to read along, or just have the information at hand later. If you're watching this broadcast later, you can go to our website now and follow along. Each article has a link to the original article that we talk about, so you'll be able to follow the story as I move along. And as we move along, major flooding in Queensland. Townsville Dam spillway gates fully open as extreme rainfall continues for Australia. I tell you what, this area has seen a freak winter storm just a few weeks ago in the southwest portion of the continent. They've seen intense heat, and now we are talking about some crazy rain total numbers, which last year about this time, I remember reporting this kind of rainfall in this region about the same time last year, or sort of close to it, I should say. But it says here the region has already received extreme amounts of rain over the past 9 to 10 days, dropping as much as 19.6 inches in 24 hours on January 26th. So it almost rained for an inch an hour for 24 straight hours on the 26th of January. Parts of Douglas Shire is where that happened. In some places, 11.8 inches of rain fell in just 6 hours. 6 hours, 11.8 inches of rain. Now, I'll always be an advocate of cosmic rays, the abundance of them in our atmosphere, and I will always stick by that these things are like steroids for particles and induce these water vapor droplets into raindrops and even then some. When you have an overexposure of highly charged particles in the atmosphere, you get 11.8 inches of rain in just 6 hours. And guys, this event right here is isolated, and it's sometimes considered normal, I guess. They've had these kinds of storms over in Australia, but imagine this happening on a regular basis. And that's what we're trying to get people familiar with, is these events, to know what to do or what to expect, or to at least know the dangers of this kind of moisture falling in any area. It says here in 48 hours to January 27th, the area received more than 24.4 inches of rain. I mean, some areas get that in an entire year. All that rain in such a short period of time caused the Danatee River to rapidly rise, break the major flood stage at 9 meters, which is around 30 feet, around 1800 local time, January 26th, and peaked just after midnight. On Sunday, January 27th, it was at flood stage 41.3 feet. So tremendously, almost doubled, a little half than doubled. Breaking the previous record of 40.6 feet set in 1901. So here we go, another one of those 100-year-old floods that we all hear about. And make no mistake, not everybody's going to get their 100-year event right at the same time. So these are going to continue to pop up over the next several years, where we continue to talk about 100-year, 200-year, 500-year flood totals. It says here that the rain continued to fall over the next couple of days and further intensified over Ingham and Townsville, dropping around 19.6 inches of rain in just 24 hours on February 3rd. Most of that rain fell after sunset. 3.93 inches of rain per hour was recorded, according to Higgins storm chasing reports. The continuous rainfall over Greater Townsville has also led the city recording its wettest week in history, beating the night of Noah by over 100 millimeters. plenty of footage to look at here on watchers.net. Let's watch a little bit of a video. This was once a stream. No thank you, news lady. I'm here for the, and this is a news report, so my apologies, folks. But check out watchers.news, tons of pictures and photos and videos explaining what's going on right now, and we will definitely keep an eye on this situation. All right, moving right along. Snow closes schools, cuts power, snarls traffic around Puget Sound. I meant to have this with the California situation, but still, we're on the western part of the world, and we had heavy rain, flooding in and around California, northern and southern. But I wanted to talk a little bit about this too, because it seemed like everywhere I looked today, there was a snow event in the northwest. So not only are we getting pounded with rain in the west coast, but here in the northwest have seen their share of snow, and it says it is expected to freeze tonight with lows in the mid-20s. Any water or snow on the roads that will freeze will make it slippery commute for Tuesday morning. The cold air began surging south through Puget Sound, and early afternoon was cold enough overnight to snow in most locations, even down to sea level, leaving commuters with snowy roads across most of western Washington Monday morning. Now, when will the snow end? Early Monday. Meteorologist Nick Allard said that there is a consistent band of snow along I-5 and east. This band will taper off and then continue on and off until about midday. The National Weather Service estimated snowfall end times were between 11 and 1 between Everett and Tacoma, and then Tacoma to Everett is going to be about 2 to 4 p.m. and the Chehalis to Tacoma between 4 and 8 p.m. So we've got winter weather advisories, we got winter storm warnings, we have winter storm warnings in multiple parts, and more winter weather advisories all over the state, calling from anywhere from 2 to 4 inches to up to 5 inches as well. Power outages, more than 3,000 in Puget Sound. Energy customers were without power. Meanwhile, thousands were without power in northern Whatcom County, where a high wind warning is in effect. About 16,000 were left without power as of 6 a.m. this morning. It says a look ahead, according to the National Weather Service, breezy conditions persist Monday night with wind chills mainly in the teens. By around Thursday, we will see more moisture move in, and it will more than likely start to snow or even be a snow or a rain-snow mix all day. We'll see that potential through the weekend. We'll have more details as it gets closer. Thank you, Cairo 7 in the northwest. Link will be in the description. While we're talking about storms, we have another winter storm that's not going to affect a large portion of the United States this week, but it is going to bring a little bit of problems to the far northern part of the lower 48. We're talking about ice, freezing rain, and snow accumulations, but not everybody is going to get pummeled with snow with this storm. And I'm going to try to find a map. So this is what we're looking at on Tuesday night. There's that freezing rain that Chicago, you're a prime candidate, and they're a little worried that they could see more than 1/10 of an inch of ice falling at that point. Wednesday, though, temperatures warm up a little bit for you guys. That changes all to rain, but look at South Dakota and North Dakota. -4 in Bismarck, 24 in Minneapolis, heavy snow. And parts of Michigan will start to see the freezing rain. So watch out, Detroit, possibly Flint metro areas. And then as the storm goes into Thursday, south part of Michigan, you'll get the rain at that point. With the northern part of Michigan, Traverse City, Interlochen, that area, the UP, you'll get the frozen precipitation, the ice, and snow still falling in Minnesota and parts of Wisconsin and northern Iowa. Mainly southern Canada gets the most of this. While we're here, we'll look at the snowfall totals through Wednesday. There's your rain, there's your snow. Like I said, Washington and Oregon getting some precipitation in the frozen format. But here we are looking at snow totals through Thursday. And you can see that parts of Minnesota receiving 5 to 8. A foot or more is expected in parts of northwestern Wisconsin up into Marquette, Green Bay. You're looking at about 5 to 8. Chicago, Detroit, no snow out of this, guys. But this is where you have the ice situation come in. Now, 1/10 of an inch is not really enough to do any damage. They don't damage tree lines or power line or trees or power lines. So it's, if anything, this is just a annoyance. This storm, like I said, the snowfall is going to be mainly here in the far northern plains, Minnesota, northern Wisconsin, parts of northern Iowa, the Dakotas. You might see a moderate 3 to 5. Some areas might receive 5 to 8. But other than that, Winter Storm Lucian is thankfully not a major factor, but still can cause problems between tomorrow and Thursday across the United States. And this is a decent storm here, because not only are we looking at snowfall here in the Midwest and the northern plains, but look at the map. I mean, it extends all the way back through the Rockies into the West Coast. So we're looking at snow, moisture. And, you know, let me break away from this. This is our current situation with our map here. Check this out. Look at all the moisture that we have. So we see where the fuel is coming in, and it is just getting fed. Peculiar to look at. Maybe not peculiar for you guys, but maybe maybe it's just me. It almost appears as if these bands up here and these bands up here, I don't know, just going northeast. Not really so much in an easterly fashion, but a northeast direction, bottom and top. Either way you look at this, though, tons of moisture in the atmosphere. Let's take a look at the water vapor that we have available too right now. And for those of you wondering, I think we have a rhino that lives upstairs. So if you hear a deep bass noise, it's the rhino walking around upstairs above us in our building. Okay. Anyway, here is our water vapor, and check this out. Again, lots of moisture in the United States. A few dry pockets of air right now going across south central Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee. Other than that, the rest of the country is primed for some weather to happen in their neck of the woods. All right, so the next article I want to talk about, Washington Times, University of Alabama scientist, no evidence of climate change causes extreme cold. Interesting. Now, you have to go to Washington Times to get the real news. You can't trust the oh, I think we have a little bit of error here, possibly. Here's enough of it I can read you at this point. My apologies, folks. I'll get the links corrected for you after the show. Numerous media outlets cited last week the polar vortex as an example of extreme weather caused by climate change. So basically, Roy Spencer is getting some mainstream press time for his claims of what's going on and why that global warming is not causing the polar vortex. And this is good to see a mainstream paper posting this article. And the reason why I put this here is right before it is because the person that just got put to the advisory board rejects warming. This scientist here, now, John Christie, professor of atmospheric science at the University of Alabama, Huntsville. So the correlation I made here was that we have Dr. Roy Spencer in the news talking about his theories of polar vortex and why the global warming is not causing these polar vortex. And we discussed this too the other night in our broadcast, as well as Joe Bastardi gave an excellent explanation of what happens and why this polar vortex has started in the first place. And Joe showed us it was in the tropics. But anyway, this scientist here, John Christie, he is a professor of atmospheric science at the University of Alabama, Huntsville, was one of the first to push the federal government to conduct a red team, blue team debate on climate science. And I remember we talked about this before a few months back, where I did an article talking about this red team, blue team, and how the White House was potentially gearing up for a debate about climate change and the science on it. So, it goes on to read that Christian said there's a benefit, not a cost, to producing energy from carbon. He also says here that he also believes that CO2 is good for the environment. Christie, who is a frequent critic of EPA regulations, said he will use his position on the 45-member board to question the results of climate models. He's a frequent speaker at conservative think tanks that promote the notion that the worldwide temperature increases are largely unrelated to human activity. Finally. So how did John Christie get a seat on this board? Well, pretty simple. Andrew Wheeler and others had something to do with this, I'm sure. But members who will be appointed or reappointed include experts from a wide variety of scientific disciplines who reflect the geographic diversity needed to represent all 10 EPA regions. When asked what was his first priority would be as a member of the SAB, Christie said he would try to convince his colleagues that nature is responsible for rising temperatures, not people. John Christie, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's about time. And thanks to Dr. Roy Spencer for your continued work at the University of Alabama, Huntsville. Now, I'm sure with this gentleman here being named to an advisory board, we might start seeing more of Dr. Roy Spencer testifying to Congress and Senate. Things could be a real game changer, folks. You know how I don't like to get politics involved with this, but right now, the people that are helping with the situation is the current administration that's in office. We haven't seen this kind of action and change, shakeup in the EPA in quite some time. And it's clear that moves like this, by appointing this man to an advisory, he's named an advisory board, Christie, he's going to challenge his colleagues to hey, hold on, let's pump the brakes. Nature is causing all this warming, and nature is going to cause this upcoming cooling. So if they pull back, what if, let's just say this guy gets right to work this year. He pulls back a lot of EPA regulations. He gets a lot of carbon taxes reduced. All of a sudden, next thing you know, people are using fossil fuels at a record rate. But what happens if the temperatures slightly reflect that we're going in a different direction? What happens if we continue to increase fossil fuel needs and the temperatures continue to decline? Is that what it takes for the American public to finally understand that CO2 is a huge misunderstanding on how it works in the science? And I really think that's what the biggest difference is. It's not about who's smarter about weather. It's who understands the science the correct way. Only time will tell, but I'll tell you right now, guys, things are looking good for this administration when it comes to fighting these silly carbon taxes, this whole notion that man controls the climate. Here lately, I've seen a lot of things that show me otherwise, especially, I can't say enough about the Joe Bastardi video, weatherbill.com, where he basically predicts the pattern of these polar vortex outbreaks because of the tropics. Today, I wrote a piece on our website discussing is it just sunspots? Is it just sunspots that have anything to do with our temperatures? Because I think a lot of people who are blind to the subject by choice or by what they've been taught, it is not just a matter of sunspots alone creating climate and temperature issues. There's a lot of things involved. And I go over that as well in this article. It's just a short little quick food for thought today, basically. But, a lot of folks get hung up on sunspots warming or sunspots cooling, and that's it. And they don't see the big picture because there is a lot more to it. And we talk about some of that stuff on a daily basis. Atmospheric, the oceans. We monitor the oceans big time. And a lot of that, I'd like to thank Starman for really kind of getting me to watch what happens in the El Nino 3-4 zone. and his understanding and all the write-ups that he has had for that particular subject. Moving along here to another article that I found that was a little bit interesting, and then I think we're going to go into our weather report. A brutal example of why 100% renewables can't work. The brutal cold wave that just struck America proves a stark example of why 100% renewables can possibly not work. Once the massive high pressure system was in place, there was almost no wind, no significant wind. So what are you going to do for power? So no wind power. At the coldest temperatures were far at night and in the early morning. So when there was no solar power either, for example, take the Mid-Atlantic region overseen by the PJM Regional Transmission Organization. The PJM coordinated the move over wholesale electricity in all parts of Delaware, Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky, Maryland, Michigan, New Jersey, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, etc., etc., etc. What this all comes down to, folks, coal, natural gas, oil burns at night as well. And another example, especially in the wintertime, if you're running solar or one of these high pressure systems that just sits and there's no wind and it gets dark at 4 o'clock, 4:30, 5 o'clock, you're dark until 7 a.m. the next day. So how are you going to make up for that harvest of power between those hours during negative 15 degrees surface temperatures or negative 30, negative 40 degree wind chill? How are you going to keep your family warm at night? It's not going to be through solar and wind. I can tell you that right now, unfortunately. I've spoke recently that I believe that if you're just powering your own ranch, your own home, if the situation occurs where we have grid failure due to weather, due to solar weather, having solar power and wind power on your private property might be enough. Others have suggested pedal bikes to do power. Others have figured out ways to use water, running water, to create power. So I think too, Mari and I would love to start a series on talking about alternative power for your immediate needs as far as you and your family on your property, not as a solution worldwide. I just don't think with what we've seen on the Grand Solar Minimum channel that it's even feasible to go 100% renewable with what we know. The fact that the electricity power is higher now because of how much it costs to maintenance the solar and wind fields, how much it costs to harvest from solar and wind fields, how much you have to pay the homeowner. There's certain states that have agreements with homeowners that get paid too because their power companies are taking power from their solar. So it's a giant mess. And the bottom line is, when you've got a top scientist in the United States who is being appointed on an advisory board, and he's telling the world that, listen, CO2 is not harmful to our environment, and his number one priority in office is going to be to try to convince people that that's serious. He's going up against everybody right now, in my opinion. He's climbing uphill with no shoes and 20 below degree temperatures. That takes passion, that takes commitment, and that takes knowledge of the truth to be able to go up against something like that. So, good luck to you, Mr. John Christie. We hope you get all the support possible to continue to bring the truth about CO2 and its ineffectiveness here as a power resource, and especially for us to become dependent 100% on green energy. Taking a look at our tropical tidbits, our ocean temperatures right now, not moving at all. We're actually looking at the North Atlantic cooling a little bit as well. It's been on a downward trend for quite some time. The longest we'd seen in a while, probably the steepest as well. And then looking at El Nino 3-4 region, here we go. 0.381 above baseline. We are officially neutral. It continues to stay below that El Nino status. So right now we are not looking at any kind of El Nino situation. Now, what we are looking at possibility of is a El Nino development in early fall. Maybe. I'm not going to hold my breath. NOAA was 60 to 90% positive that we would have had a late breaking El Nino by January or February. That hasn't happened. It hasn't met the criteria of what a true El Nino is. Not yet, anyway. All right, let's take a look at our outlook. Temperatures, we have that bounce back warm up. Let's look at temperatures first. Some good news. We're looking, let's get the updated ones first. How about that? Some good news. Not everybody is sub-freezing right now. Here we are, Monday. Look at that. Quite nice here in the Midwest. Northeast Pennsylvania, 30s and 40s. Guys, compared to what we've seen lately, that's balmy. 60s and 70s in parts of Texas. Florida didn't quite warm up that high. That cold air is still trying to invade the United States. Right now, it is definitely up there in the northern plains, into the upper Great Lakes. But that warm spring-like air is hanging around a little bit longer here on the East Coast and the Midwest. And then that cold air finally starts pushing through on February 9th. And look at the blob of Arctic cold blast that is trying to make its way into the lower 48. Once again, temperatures this weekend, Minnesota, back in the negative 20s. Chicago, you're not going to get it as brutal as you did last time. But parts of Wisconsin, Minnesota, the Dakotas, definitely. And as we move forward into this Saturday, temperatures trying to level out once again, staying in the 20s for about 50% of the United States. The far northern plains are going to see a lot colder temperatures, and really just an odd pattern over the next couple of days where that line, that freezing line, is going to hang out. And then we get one more bounce back, warm up, before we get to Valentine's Day. And this is where I'm going to stop it, because I really don't feel like that these charts are really worth anything past a certain time. This goes up to the following. This is about 7 days out. This is about as far as we should go. Still indications of possibly some warmer air in the Central Plains and into the parts of the Midwest, but more cold air to return to the Northwest and Midwest, East Coast, and the Northeast by mid-month. And the reason why I stop that there is because there is a difference right now between the GFS and the European models. There is some suggestions that we will see another shot of very cold Arctic air mass invading the Midwest, the Northeast, the East Coast once again by mid-month or the 20th of February. So this stays in line with all of that talk about winter lasting into March. But taking a look at the precipitation, it's going to be rain here for us in the northeast, with snow across the northern plains and the upper Great Lakes. That freezing rain event will happen in the Northeast on Thursday, but mainly rain for the most part for the Northeast. And then another low pressure system continues to drop snow on Minnesota and Wisconsin, the UP of Michigan. More rain to head the way in the Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee Valley, as well as the Northeast before the cold air comes back for good for a little while, and it'll change over to some light snow in the Northeast. Meanwhile, a huge low pressure system on the Northwest on this Sunday that looks like it's going to cause a little bit of problems and constant moisture. Lots of snow in Washington and Oregon, moving into Northern California. By Monday, this system finally makes landfall all the way, and by then we have a little system, something starting up here that does stem from that low pressure system and finally organizes itself across the Central Plains, going into the Midwest, Ohio Valley, some light snow in the mid-Atlantic states. Not much for the Northeast on that storm. Another storm coming through on the 12th. It's trying to get its act together. Another snow system moving through Minnesota, Wisconsin. More rain to the region by the 13th. That was that last bit of warm air, and that ends as snow for the Northeast as that system goes through on Valentine's Day. And look at the Southwest. Look at this. Jeez. Heavy rains, heavy snow, more possibly in the feet in the Sierras for next Thursday on the West Coast. So that's going to be the next area of interest for us, is to keep an eye on an area that already has massive flooding going on right now in the burn areas, and this will continue into next week, late next week as well. Tons of moisture to come into the region, and I guess just for shits and giggles, let's take a look at this next low pressure system as it marches across the United States. Not so impressive when it gets to the East Coast. And again, as we watch the GFS, I think the GFS is being a little bit lambish on the winter weather. Others, European models and other models, are predicting a little bit more wintry, but hey, I'll take what I can get right now because we've seen our share of snow for sure in upstate New York. Taking a quick look at some ice, still pretty much intact in the North Arctic. Taking a look at sea ice growth, and we are still keeping up with the averages from 2012 right to the T right now. So impressive ice growth compared to what we've seen last year. Now this time last year we saw a little spike and then it leveled out for the rest of the year and was below average until we got about late October, when it started to rapidly grow and quickly got its act together at the end of the year and is maintaining its current growth at this point. So we will continue to see things continue to progress in the Arctic, as well as monitoring the temperatures across the globe. Mari, I would like to ask to see how everything has been tonight. Check in with you in the subs in the chat, of course.
Hi, Jake.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm fantastic.
Well, Jake, it's always a pleasure in the chat. We haven't had, any goobers or nothing. All kinds of new people in the chat discussing things. There's a lot of learning going on. People are interested in what you're talking about, but they don't get some of the terminology, and people in the chat are being very helpful. So thank you all in the chat. Hello, 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 and welcome to GSM. I did post the link to just the main website link. For those who aren't or have not been on the website, it's something new that we just sort of relaunched, completely redone. We've added a bunch of social aspects to it. So, if you don't want to go on Facebook and have your post censored, you don't have to worry about that there, as long as you behave yourself and be respectful to others. It's a nice safe haven for people to chat about climate change, gardening, prepping, all that fun stuff.
Great. Thanks a lot, Mari. I appreciate the report tonight. Guys, that's going to do it for us tonight on Monday, February 4th, 2019. We will be live once again Wednesday on February 6th, 2019, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. So until then, guys, we will talk soon. Take care.